So when I was growing up, I was always surrounded by gardens.
We're building so many places like this in Beijing and in other cities.
Are we talking about a new concept?
Suzhou and the Summer Palace, they have a lot of unique technique and unique design method we can learn from.
I work on much larger projects in China than I did in the United States.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Crossover. I'm Ji Xiajun.
Hello everyone, I'm Louisa Lee.
This is indeed a very special studio. We're still in Beijing.
Yes, we are. This is really a pleasant setting, isn't it?
Well, this is, how shall we describe this? This is a garden, but this is more like a nursery center for all these trees and flowers and plants.
Yes,
you like the environment here?
I do, you know. I was just thinking about this. You know, my mother is fond of growing plants and flowers.
Okay.
So when I was growing up, I was always surrounded by gardens.
All right.
So I don't know, being in close proximity with nature is very important to me.
So you're not traveling back to your childhood?
Kind of.
Memories.
This reminds me of like the garden I grew up in.
Yeah, I grew up in the countryside, but it's, you know, the environment was all natural, but it's nothing as fancy as this environment.
This is really huge, and we're seeing a lot of different varieties of plants and flowers.
So today we're going to talk about your childhood or my childhood?
We can do that. We can do that.
Right. It's all about a green lifestyle.
Yes.
Think green, live green. And we're now joined in the studio by two ladies and one gentleman. And shall we introduce our guests first?
Yes.
We have Ms. Zhao with us.
Yes.
Tell us what you do.
You see, you're here in our garden.
This is your place, right?
Yes, this is my place. And actually, this is only one testing site. And we're building so many places like this in Beijing and in other cities.
Right. Wow.
Yeah,
Big boss, Ms. Zhao.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we grow flowers and trees.
And we also have Jenny joining us. What do you do, Jenny?
I'm by training a landscape architect. I'm from Ecoland Planning and Design Company. We do urban design, landscape architecture, architecture design. It's more, everything is about environmental. It's about creating green, how to design green for the city, for the countryside.
So that's what it means by landscape architecture.
Yes.
Is it a new concept, or it's been there for a while?
A concept's been there for more than 100 years. Actually, it's been in China for even longer than that. We don't call it maybe similar to landscape architecture. It's more in the China. It's more of the landscape gardening art. That art has very matured. Now, more than 100 years ago, Olmsted in U.S. started this.
I guess you're not referring to those gardens in Suzhou, and like the Summer Palace, the Royal Summer Palace in Beijing, is all these beautifully designed gardens. But that's exactly where the problem is. And when we talk about gardens, and when we talk about designing all these gardens, we always think of those gardens, right, in Suzhou, all very delicate, exquisite. But are we talking about a new concept?
It's a broadened concept now, because in the past it's more for the special group of people. They are mostly not open to the public. So now in our public space, most area, they need to be accessible for everyone. It's not just private garden. So Suzhou and the Summer Palace, they are like a private garden. They are a royal garden. They have a lot of unique technique and unique design method we can learn from. But there's a lot of new issue we have to deal with.
Yeah. Vince.
Yes, I'm also a landscape architect. I'm from the United States. I worked there for a number of years, but I've been in China, in Beijing specifically, for about 6 years, working and designing here parks, gardens, residential communities, large-scale city planning.
How different do you think the two countries are in terms of, except say from the different different units that
basically,
we use?
from the difference for me was the scale of the projects. I work on much larger projects in China than I did in the United States.
Right.
The size of the development are so much larger, and just the scope of the work is much grander and more intense, I believe.
All right.
As a landscape architect, we're not just talking about designing the garden, right? We're also talking about designing the garden with the building with it. So it's more than just like designing, like, say, your own home garden.
Landscape architecture actually encompasses a lot of different disciplines. we have to know site engineering, we have to know drainage, we have to know construction. We know all of this in architecture. It brings everything together, plus the plants, to create an entire environment, not just adding plants to a space. We're not just gardeners. Landscape architects do a multiple of tasks within their design.
So we're from two different fields.
Okay.
And for example, if they build a building, they have a planning, and they have a drawing, you know, how much space they want to grow trees and flowers and have a ponds and, you know, water. They will attract the birds, and, you know, they're doing the entire design. And after somebody build the building, it's our turn, you know, to put all the plans together. So you see, and we're doing like makeup.
Whatever you do, you're all very important. But the thing is, for us, if we live in a building, live in a city, we don't really care, well, how you describe your own career, what you do. What we do care about is if the environment is good enough for us to want to stay, right? But the thing is, still it seems there is, if not a campaign, not a trend, but lots of people who might be living in the city before, but they decide to actually move to the countryside, or even flee all these big cities to the smaller cities. And one of the reasons they gave out was for the green, for the distance. They want to be closer to nature. So in that sense, you guys are not doing a great job. I mean, these people are still leaving the cities. Why is this happening, Jenny?
In the city, there is a certain percentage of green by land use, zoning, and if you can reach 30%, that's when you develop a piece of land. Normally, that you meet the regulation. So if you want to increase, that's our job, to convince our client to have more green instead of more building. And then in the urban planning, there are certain green space, like when they color the green, those are the parks. If you reach over 30%, like say 31%, and then you will have a good name for landscape city. You will qualify for that.
Okay.
But recently, that's easy goal target to reach. Recently, they have over 300 of city has been qualified for that. So they raised the bar. They have ecological landscape city you can apply. Right now, they
always invent new names. Huh?
Yes. Right now, there are only 7 cities who qualify for that. Only like Suzhou, Zhuhai, a few cities, because the bar is higher.
How high is the bar in America?
Well, it's fairly about the same, 30% per development.
Are we seeing a growing trend of people leaving the city and going to the countryside? Because we talked about the downsides of living in metropolitan cities, the air pollution, the mad traffic. Are we seeing a growing trend of people leaving, or are we seeing a growing trend of people that are starting to care more about having green spaces in urban cities?
I think public has raised their awareness towards the green because the city getting more and more crowded. The urbanization, a lot of people from countryside, they come to city, they're missing their piece of land, they're missing the greenery where they grow up with. So in the city, they have to earn their living, but they actually, in their back of their mind, they need that green to spend their weekend with their children. But outside in the countryside, a lot of infrastructure hasn't come as good as city yet, such as school, such as hospital. So people have to stay in the city in the forest of concrete and glasses.
I know in America, in the States, they're trying to create parks that is 10 minutes, it's like a 10-minute walk for everyone. That's what they're trying to do with every cities in the United States. And San Francisco was able to achieve that goal. And I wanted to know if, you know, here in China, we're also doing something like that for the public.
So it's important for us to try to incorporate and plan for future cities that we have enough green space that are connected together. Connectivity is very, very important. If we plan these large parks that no one can get to, it doesn't really work. So there needs to be like a series of parks. And Beijing has a little bit of that problem where we have parks, but it's not as connected as possible.
We're talking about two different lifestyles, or one lifestyle in the countryside with lots of green spaces, but at the same time, maybe life is not that convenient as in the cities. But in the cities, if it is convenient and modern, then probably you're going to make some sacrifices about views, right? But can you actually reach a point where you can reach this balance, Jenny?
Well, we're trying to search the balance all the time.
Right.
The balance right now is by law. A lot of time people will try to expand the balance. For example, you talk about the land value. The best example is Central Park in New York City. That's by law has been dedicated for green. And a lot of developers in the past 100 years, many times they try to put building on that, but they cannot by law. That's where the government function and the regulation can work towards that. So it's a battle. The green and the hardscape, let's say hardscape building, road, people need the road wider and wider. There are more and more cars. But green space helps to reduce pollution. It helps to purify the water, purify the airs.
And beyond that, in a more general sense, green urban spaces provide places for physical activity, for relaxation, for reducing stress.
Right?
It's a refuge from the noise of the city. It even helps with mental illness. It helps you, it helps with your mental state.
It also helps to promote a lot of other species other than human being. We can't just live by ourselves. We have to preserve our planet for the future. So this is very important for our profession. That's why I think we're very proud of being a landscape architect. Sometimes we have to battle with traffic planner, battle with architect. We goal is the same.
Yeah. Ms. Zhang?
Yeah, and we talked about how city people love green space, but there's so much limitations in the big cities like Beijing and Shanghai. Land is so valuable, and the price is so high, and we work very well with the real estate companies, and we work with many of them, and they're so proud when they talk to me about, okay, and we like you to buy, our new building because the price will increase again. When I talk with them and try to find out the price, how much they sell for per square meter, and they told us our price is already 200,000 yuan per square meter, and the more expensive the land is, and then the less space they have for greenery. So that's the problem.
I think that's where the government comes in. The Ministry of Housing and Urban and Rural Department, they have a goal to build 1,000 special towns with special character. That's ideally. So right now there are a lot of projects. We involve some of the projects. One in Hebei province near Qinhuangdao, and it's a mining site. So it's a countryside. They want to improve one place and find the specialty of that place and make some infrastructure available to the local people so they can stay in their hometown. They don't flood it into the city. And gradually, it will be more fair for the countryside people or for people who want to live near green to have those accessible infrastructure at the same time.
In other words, the dilemma in the cities can't be solved, or can't be solved that easily.
We are trying all the time. That's where Ms. Zhao and our business, we did a lot of urban park to have a common garden, like a living room, a garden not for any private, but for common for the neighborhood. Besides the park, sometimes it has neighborhood park or office building, office compound. They can have a pocket green, and it could be open to the public to come to
I like this. Public pocket green.
The shared gardens, the shared parks.
Okay. And that's what you said, the public connectivity.
Yeah, connectivity. Having small parks that are intermingled throughout the neighborhoods that give connectivity to the larger parks gives the people in the whole area the opportunity to use those parks. And And that's a growing trend in the United States, too, where we put little parks everywhere within the neighborhoods. Yeah. So you really get this kind of green connectivity all through the cities, and it's much easier to use those.
It almost sounds like nature is so far away from our life, but actually that's not true. And for Chinese people, even in ancient time, the connection between human beings and nature, that's like in our blood, in our life, in our philosophy, is always there. It's only, I guess, in the past decades, China's been focusing more on the economic development, and then somehow the attention's been driven away from creating this more nature, environmentally friendly, living environment, say. Yeah. And now it seems the public awareness is coming back to that point again. So it's not only about creating all these green spaces, it's more about a new lifestyle. Yes. Or maybe going back to this old lifestyle, this harmonious connection between human beings and nature. That leads to the next question: what can we do to make it happen, to make us live greener in the future? We'll take a break first, and when we come back, we'll continue our discussion.
And for more information about Crossover, make sure you follow us on Instagram and Facebook.
How can we live a greener lifestyle?
Those already green need to be preserved.
This vacant land will be turned into greenery.
And it's a very, very green city. I worked on a park within that that's about the size of Central Park in New York City. And that was a great experience for me.
Are we going to see a park like this in Beijing? Welcome back to our garden studio.
And this is indeed a very green episode. And today we're talking about this.
The importance of having green space in urban cities.
Exactly, especially in big cities. And how can we live a greener lifestyle? Here's the question: what can we do from different perspectives? From the government side, from the corporate side, and from our individual side. What can we do to make us live in a better environment?
So we are all familiar to the government planning. Every 5 years, they will focus on something, right? Mm. And with the more and more sound or complaints about the pollution, and that gives so much pressure to the government. They have to do something. So and now we see that within the past 10 years, every 5 years, there's actually actions and favorable policies given to the industry, like the nursery industry. Government really like to encourage more business to invest money and to grow more plants instead of having real estate companies go to the mountains and move the big trees, keep the environment there, and also they spend money to encourage businesses to come to the suburb and the countryside to grow young plants. We are one of them. And we're taking part of a job or program called scale or standard nursery production.
It's all very good. I mean, that's what the government's been doing. But what do you expect the government to do more?
I think there are a lot more government can do as far as regulation. They can protect the current green land not to turn into other color as residential or as office complex, as a commercial or as road. So those already green need to be preserved. That's why recently there's national park. Actually, in the before, there's other regulation. Just hopefully this time will be more stronger regulation to preserve those land. On another hand, another type is those land who are not colored in green, let's say residential or commercial, they have to meet normally 30%
Wait,
of
just now you mentioned the word projects colored in green.
That's land use map, as zoning map we call it. Land use map in the urban planning is almost like a law to developer. If it's zoned by residential, you can hardly preserve it as a park because sooner or later the price is there and people buy that piece of land for residential. They have to put house there. Anyway, they have to keep 30% remaining green.
Okay.
And on the other hand is to improve the quality of it. Sometimes they have underground parking and the rooftop garden, whether it's count towards it or not towards it. They're very different. City has their different way of calculating. In Beijing, I think rooftop garden, if it's half the soil thick enough, they only count 1/5, like 20% towards it. So if you have a big roof garden, say, this is my 30%, you're actually not meeting it. That's where the regulation can be more and more become a tool for us, so we don't have to battle for that.
Most of our customers, the developers in Beijing, they talk about there's no more land available in Beijing, so they move out to Hebei, to Tianjin, to other cities, and looking for new land for construction. And we also knew a big movement in Beijing that government is tearing out all those poor houses attached to the city side, and they move all the market and so many markets outside to other places. But they're not giving more space for new construction. And these vacant land will be turned into greenery, parks. And,
so is that only the problem that exists in Beijing or all these big cities in China?
In all big cities.
All big cities.
Yeah, we feel a big action in Beijing. And we know the Xiong'an Xinqu, the Xiong'an, the new zone. Yeah. And that's why Beijing is getting so big. The population is so dense. There's no space anymore. And so this is why government decide to move so many units, so many organizations out to other space. So they will put the countryside land more useful to host more people. And we see many corners around the buildings and many streets, and they are getting wider and greener and more colorful.
It's all happening now.
It's all happening now.
Okay.
Yeah.
One thing that amazed me when I first got to China was that a lot of these cities, that they have grown so exponentially, so fast over the last couple of decades, that their old cities didn't quite contain everything they need, so they're almost building entire new cities next to their old cities. And they've learned from their mistakes in the past of not having the green space and the connected parks, and they're incorporating that into their new parks. I worked on a project, I guess it's about 4 years ago, near Xi'an. Basically, their city is trapped in a valley, and they couldn't go any farther, so they've gone on top of the mountains and started building a whole new city up there to expand their city, and it's a very, very green city. I worked on a park within that that's about the size of Central Park in New York City, and that was a great experience for me to be able to create a park like that for a new city.
Examples like that, they're happening.
So they are happening, yes.
So, in other words, and people in the government, they realize the importance of having a plan.
Definitely.
A development plan before anything happens, right? So that's one major change, I would say, compared to before.
It is a big change from before. They have learned from the past that they didn't plan for that, and now that it's very important that they should have that within the cities.
From your knowledge and any experience that China can learn, say, from America in terms of what they can do in the government?
It's kind of the same way that it developed in the United States. I mean, our big parks started kind of in the Industrial Revolution, when the cities became crowded with buildings and people and overpopulation and foul air, and that's when Central Park came about. And it was designed by Frederick Law Olmsted, and it not only transformed the city, it became a cultural icon for generations. So from that, we learned that parks are very important to cities.
And we are seeing all these big parks in, mega cities, like in London and Vancouver. You have the Stanley Park, you have the Hyde Park in London. Are we going to see a park like this in Beijing?
We have Chaoyang Park.
Oh, we do have Chaoyang Park.
We have the Olympic Park.
We have the Olympic Park, which is massive. Actually, it's so big it's hard to walk it.
That's why people run inside. A lot of people actually choose to run inside that park. So that's from the government side. What about from, say, your side?
In the past 10 years, even 15 years, we have been working very hard on improving the quality of the landscaping in a way that we introduce many, many more plants into the business. So you can see in the cities, not only the greenery space is expanded, but also the quality. You see more color all year round. And even in the winter, you can see some color. The fall color is brilliant. It's starting to be very brilliant. And you see more flowers in the springtime, not only the peaches, not only the the very limited flowers we see in the past, and you see a lot of flowers you never saw before. That's from us, and that's from our job. We have been bringing all plants materials together, no matter it's from United States, from France, or from Germany, from the high mountains in Europe, because we are searching for the plants all has the China blood. We want them to be back and serve our own country.
I mean, it's all business opportunity, but at the same time, I guess you also need to find some new creative ways of creating this green space, right, Jenny?
Yes. Recently, we have a project in the middle of the city called the Wangjing Soho. It's architecture designed by Zaha Hadid. So we have a big open space. Now it's almost become a living room for the neighborhood. The people goes there. It's more of the creative. So for the private enterprise, number one, we follow the rule of landscape regulation. Two, sometimes we consult for the regulation for those people who make a regulation, give some research for data or technical support for them to have new strict regulations. The third is we help the developer to put a lot of nice dream on paper, actually, finally, to become true on the ground. Another project we recently done is the Wild Duck Wetland Nature Preserve Park in Beijing, in Yanqing, which is 1.5 million square meters of water. Now it holds like 42 families and 150 species. So we see the effect is more birds coming to, they migrate, stop there, more birds in numbers and in species every year grows. At the same time, we educate a lot of citizens awareness of the green. The green is for smell, it's for touching, it's for the color, it pleases the mind. So it not only gives us physical pleasing, it's spiritual too.
So it's also about restoring and preserving the natural environment as a landscape architect, right, Vince?
Yeah, that's one thing we do is there's a lot of places that have been kind of destroyed and the natural habitat has been lost. And there's those opportunities where you can bring that back with native plants and a very ecological style landscape design that would bring those habitats back and bring the ecological communities back.
What about individuals, and what can we do?
What can we do? I mean, should we plant our own gardens in our balcony? What should we do?
Love flowers.
Love flowers.
Love plants. Eat organic plants. Learn, try to recognize bugs. There's good bugs, bad bugs.
Right.
The trend comes back. It comes back to the cities. So people will grow something in a balcony or in the platform, and also if you have a small piece of land, and edibles is the top consideration.
Yeah, just make sure they plant the right ones, right?
Right.
If without the right knowledge, probably that's going to be a problem.
So that's why they need us. They need the professionals to give them some guide.
So live green, that's more about the lifestyle, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Try to produce less waste.
Yeah, and the education is a big issue too. And many people, they own a garden, they don't understand the garden. So that's why the professionals, like us, we have to open classes and open a garden, welcome people to come in and have a tour and show them something and tell them something and recognize the plants and and also touch them and try to recognize which is good for bees, which is good for butterflies, and which is good for, you know, for many reasons. And you try to understand the plants. That's the first step.
That's true. I mean, living in the city for too long and then you forget. Because I grew up in the countryside, and when I was little, I was able to recognize, you know, this is edible, that is not edible, that it tastes good, but that might not, you know. But now, you know, I lost my knowledge.
Yeah. So we are having a program that trying to tell the kids, trying to tell the public, which is the season for cyclamen, which is the season for asta, and which is the season for chrysanthemums. So and people now in the city, they always go to the flower market to buy their flower bouquet and put in their vase. But you know, it is not the season that they grow these flowers in the nature, because we have greenhouses. We have created the environment that you can grow everything anytime. So the flowers, the cut flowers we see mostly are flying into Beijing from Yunnan, from other cities. But people don't know it, and kids don't know it. And they think that whenever they want something, it's there in the nature. It's not true. So we should bring the kids into the nature more and more.
Love green, eat green, and get more knowledge. Understand green, understand the nature.
Yeah.
Okay?
I'd say understand the nature, understand the green in the right way. So education is very important. When you say green, you move the tree from countryside to the city, you see the effect, the result is green, but the process is not green. So when you use a lot of lawns, actually those use a lot of irrigation, fertilizing, or you cut down the lawn. So ground cover, native species, native ground cover are better. People not aware, be more sensitive, at the same time be more aware what is the right way. We have the name Ecoland, is ecological way of looking at land. That's our mission. I hope we can promote more of the right attitude towards the green.
So that's why you see these patches of little ground covers here. They have been here for over 2 years. They experienced the hot summer and a severe cold winter. And we observe it, and we make notes and see how they perform. So I told Jenny, this one is an evergreen cover. You don't need to water them regularly.
It's easier to maintain than lawn,
It's easy to maintain, and those little bulbs, those are succulents, and it's suitable for rock garden. And these 8 pieces of land, the entire selection is very, very low. It's like a quilt for the earth. It doesn't come up very tall. It's not like the surroundings. So we're trying to find specific plant for specific aim, for specific purposes.
So this is what you mean by to understand the nature.
Understand the nature.
Knowledge,
Right.
And speaking of ground covers, we actually have a video that ground covers could be it could be an alternative for lawn. So let's take a look at the video.
10多年的应用实践当中的话呢，我们这个不断的筛选，就是从节水抗旱这个可持续发展生态理念这些方面的话呢，进行的不断的筛选出来的5种乡土地被，在城市当中的这个应用实践呢，发现啊这些大量的这个取代替代冷基型草坪的过程当中的话呢，它的生态效益是非常明显的，用水量会大量的降低，春夏秋冬它的景观效果都是可以的，冬天是完完全全可以做到解决黄土不露天的这个问题。不论是城市公园、度假村、老旧社区的改造，还有美丽乡村建设等等各方面的话呢，都引入了这个乡土地被这些品种。比如说 我们的委陵菜，去年我们做了一个粗略的统计，那么一年在京津冀地区用量超过了1000万盆，单单从我们应用的面积都超过10万平方米。
So we just watched a video about the ground covers. Do you agree that ground covers could be a alternative, a better option to replace the lawn?
Definitely. Especially in the United States, we're trying to do that because it takes a lot of resources to take care of a lawn, a lot of water, a lot of fertilizer to keep your lawn very nice and bright and green. And if you do more native plants, more types of ground covers, it takes so much less resources to keep that green, and it's much more sustainable.
Okay, and that's all about what we are supposed to do as, from the government side, from the corporate side, and also from individual side. And next we're going to talk about all these difficulties, all the challenges that might come in the way. So let's take a break first, and then we'll come back, we'll continue our discussion.
And stay updated with us by following us on Instagram and Facebook. We'll be right back.
We are losing so much. I spent 15 years to bring them back.
I'm positive for the future.
You two need to work together closer.
Educate clients in that an ecological landscape style can be beautiful too.
Design according to the natural environment rather than the other way around. Welcome back to our beautiful and green studio.
Let's continue our discussion, and now let's move on to all these possible challenges or difficulties that might come in the future to make a green city. Jenny?
I think it needs time. Plant material are available, and technology are there, but when it's reached our project to mass productive, it needs some time for nursery to make it available.
You two need to work together closer.
At the same time, it's the concept people have to accept. Perennial is better than annual. The ground cover is better than grass. A lot of people gradually can accept these ideas. So we have designed, sometimes we promote an idea called the big landscape or landscape city. Is you have the people who trained are more sensitive to environment. At the same time, we have knowledge and technology and art eyes to promote those ideas in the design, rather than the people who are more focused on the structure, more focused on the road. In the past, when there's a project meet the mountain, they will clear up the mountain. When the project meet the water, they will just fill the water. Now it's reverse.
Right.
The mountain has to be preserved. The building road go around it. That's what we're trying to persuade most of our clients accept the idea now, more and more.
They're trying to design according to the natural environment rather than the other way around.
One of the challenges I have is, as a designer, is promoting this ecological style. A lot of people don't get it. They think it's too wild. It's not rich enough. It doesn't go well with their surroundings. So it's taken some time to educate clients in that an ecological landscape style can be beautiful too. It doesn't always have to be clipped and manicured and lawns and perfect and symmetrical. You know, that's the style that's so generally accepted in China. But this new, more ecological, more sustainable style is becoming much more popular because they're realizing that it's in the long run it's cheaper and it's much more sustainable, and it forms a better ecosystem for the urban environment.
The first step is the awareness from the government side and then sort of from the public side. It seems to be there somewhere, right? People have that awareness now. The second step will be the technical side. You need to find the right way to do it. What about this? I mean, the conflict of interest between, say, developers, and also for the public interest. Do you think the conflict can be solved and there is a balance reached?
There's always a conflict, and that's our job become interesting, we always search balancing for them, and we hope most of the time we don't have to be pushed to the corner to fight for either side. And the rule and the regulation, if it's stand and solid, it could be there, it would make our job much easier.
Yeah.
The human being by nature has a lot of time is greedy. We want more and more space. We want our house bigger and bigger. We want our garden bigger and bigger, but you have only that much land. The population is growing. So to find a balance in the past few years, a lot of people has accepted the idea of sustainable. The trend is we need to, you have number one and number two. The third, we need people who knows how to do it right, to actually professional to do it, to have more of a resilient landscape in the city as well as in the countryside.
So awareness, the right technology, the right people to do it.
Are developers more receptive of this idea of creating and integrating more green space, say, to their projects? I mean, so you're talking about challenges of building more floors, expanding the living space, or creating more green space. I mean, are developers more open to having more green space nowadays?
So we just had this meeting with around 12 developers last week. Everybody's talking about use the fixed limited land or space to do more things. They're not just, you know, want to build buildings and sell more for more money and don't think about greenery, and that's not true.
Well, let's say this is a new way. I mean, there is the awareness, there is the policy, and they can always find a way out. How do you see the future?
I'm positive for the future. I think especially now, countryside or urban, people are more sensitive to the green. We have a lot of things to do. There's always balancing to find for developer as well as for the customer. If the place has more green, the land value could be higher. So they don't have to build a bigger. They could be higher quality, or they could be more nature factors in the project.
Yes?
I've even noticed that in the past few years that I've worked in China, from my start like in 2011 till now, there is more emphasis on the parks and the park systems and green, especially within residential communities, from the developers. And I do see that that's getting better through the future, and I think that it will be a growing trend.
There is a national park scheme actually recently introduced by the government, so we'll see. So what about you? I mean, how do you see the future?
I have big expectation for the future. Since I have spent 15 years trying to put all this resource of plants together, we are losing so much. You know, over the 300 years, a lot of people, they bring the plant material out to their countries. They're researching on it, they're doing breeding, and they find so many cultivars that they can use in their landscape. That's why you see in European countries, in United States, and you see the color in the fall time. But
different layers of colors.
Yeah, different layers of colors, and you know, we don't see them in China. That's not fair. That's our plants. So I spent 15 years to bring them back, like the mallows, and we're using only 1 or 2 plants for our landscape. It's quite boring. You know, the disease, the insect take them. And right now, I'm proud to say that we introduced to our landscape, you know, over 100 different cultivars. I think it's a very important job. So in the future, we want to have the public to notice that this is very meaningful, and we want more people to accept it, to understand it, and also to support it, you know, so like support our industry.
In the future, it is just possible. We don't have to travel for over 1 hour to get over here to have this beautiful outdoor studio. We might just find one right around the corner.
In the heart of Beijing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's look forward to that day, right? All right. Once again, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming to Crossover and having this conversation. And thank you for watching this episode of Crossover.
We'll see you next time.
Okay, goodbye. Join us in next week's crossover for a discussion about the aviation industry in China. Find out what new opportunities become available with the opening up of Chinese airspace and learn what it takes to become a pilot here in China. Stay tuned for our first flight training and see how Louisa and I take the challenge up the sky.